Wow. That took me to school. So now we know what it's like to be in the world of that scenario. You're a developer, how you think through a project. The next 15 minutes is going to belong to my friend Tama Dickerson, who is going to tell you his story as a developer. And to me, it is very poignant about how his personal situation has come full circle and ties into a lot of the observations that Harry made in his presentation. So, William Tama Dickerson.
Well, this is great. I can't think of a better speakers to be able to listen to this afternoon leading up to where I am. And I've thought of some great titles for my speech that I didn't have when I showed up here. So one of them would be Development Will Happen. Development will happen, but how? The other one could be The Road to Hell is Paved with Good Intentions. And I need to move this, go back and forth, excuse me. So, and then the third one is even better. I have both an ugly baby and a beautiful one. So when I started Idlewood Properties back in 1984, I started because I have a beautiful mountain retreat in the Smoky Mountains on the Cherokee Indian Reservation, Katua. And we heard Katua mentioned today, so my first project was actually called Katua, being located there. And when I started out, I did create some, what I felt like was good, sustainable intentions, and they're stated here, and I'll just read them to tell you where I started. Our mission, to treat each property individually when determining its unique gifts that deserve preservation. 2, to give careful consideration to how the development will affect the adjoining area. 3, to set aside common areas for preservation and community enjoyment. 4, to place strong protective covenants to preserve the integrity of the natural resources of the property. 5, to create larger lots, green belts, cluster sites, and community areas for wildlife corridors, and to maintain a sense of privacy and solitude. 6, to promote green building and permaculture practices and educating clients on how to have a minimum impact on the development site. So this is where I began, and as you'll see the progression of where I've ended up, it's kind of an interesting story, and that's why Ian has invited me here. So the first project I did was called Katua, and the reason I did my very first development was because my retreat in the Smokies this is taken from my front yard, okay? I'm looking up at 240 acres that were for sale, and they culminate in the 5,800-foot Black Rock Peak, which has been since protected by Southern Appalachian Highland Conservancy that you've heard about already today. So I was sitting in my yard one day, and a developer from Georgia showed up, and he said, introduced himself, and said, by the way, I wanted to let you know I bought this mountain here, and I'm going to develop it. Well, we all know what that looks like in this current market. That would have been looking like maybe 200 homes up here, and plus I was getting my water from a spring up in there somewhere that I had hidden a pipe to way up in there. And of course I kind of went into a panic. You know, I did not want to see 200 homes up there on the watershed that I got my spring from. So I actually, on my first project, I organized some friends and family. I got enough to get a down payment, and I intentionally set out to underdevelop as little as possible this mountain and recover the investment that my friends and myself and my family made. So this was the outcome. I think it was and this is not going to show up very well with the light, but unfortunately I'll just explain a little bit. So this is this whole 240 acres, and 12 years later we have 5 homes, and really it looks the same. From this day you cannot see anything on that mountain. It looks just as it did in that prior picture. There are 2 homes that were built up here that you can barely see from Water Rock Knob, one of our most beautiful overlooks on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And Southern Appalachian Highway Conservancy has, and I'm going to point to it here. So right here, this is it, this section here. This is my home here that I look up at. So I feel like this did reach the goals that I set out to do. This has been bought by SAHAC, 60 acres, protected forever. This is a 10-acre park that I personally created. And this is just a very small handful of sites. So I think there'll only ever be maybe 10 homes on this mountain, and you really don't know anyone's there still. So as I moved along, I really enjoy doing that. Really the reason I do development is because I create beautiful natural places where people can come and get in nature. We still don't have cable up there. It's a vacation rental, and I really like to, to get people reconnected with nature. My second project is off Highway 9, and it's called Idlewild. Once again, this was 240 acres. I did use the same model. I did 10-acre lots. You could allow, they could be allowed to be subdivided, into 5-acre tracts once. And once again, I knew development was coming, and it became a choice of, can I jump in there and do some much lighter development and still have people have beautiful mountain retreats and not, destroy the mountain. I feel like my second project was successful in that as well too. There's 2 homes on there now. I think there'll eventually be a maximum of probably 30 homes on 240 acres. You'll never see one house from the other, and you really don't hardly know it's there. So as I moved along, it gets more and more exciting, and this is Idlewild right here off of Highway 9. You can see the dense developments where there gets to be more 1-2 acre sites adjoining it. As we moved along, Big Laurel Mountain. This is a site of 120 acres in Madison County on the Laurel River. And the fact is, when I look back at these, are these sustainable projects? No, I wouldn't really use the word sustainable for them, although I was promoting myself as sustainable in my literature, and that was my intention. So here we got a little bit going in the other direction. More density. Here there are 42 lots on 120 acres, 46. So you're averaging 3 acres now a lot. So I'm starting to get a little bit smaller in size. Some of these sites, if I could do it again, I would not do. They're steep. They do not, need to have a house on them. And, I think if I could do that again, it would be more like 25 to 30 lots would have been appropriate. At this point, I'm starting to lose my way a little bit from my original intentions. And the one thing I do feel really good about this project is this here. All of the Big Laurel River was put into a park, okay, that's on this property. There are no homes anywhere on the property. So the one thing I do feel like turned out well here is that anytime anyone uses the Big Laurel River and goes down there, they still will not know this development exists. However, from the other mountains facing it, you will see quite a bit of development, and I find that, in retrospect, way too dense. And this is where I really lost my way, is the excitement of the development and the money flowing in and the projects. I actually knew a lot more than I thought I did, but I joined with some partners on this to learn more about development, to develop my development skills. And I actually brought in some outside money from Atlanta. Now, you're getting off course in sustainable development when your partners come up here and start describing the land as dirt. That was a hint that I missed, okay? So it did strike me wrong, but so that's what happened. This is also in Madison County. Now, at this point, this is when the community started to speak back to me quite loudly. I did have to face down about 200 angry neighbors in Madison County, in the Madison County Courthouse, when I went for approval of this project. And quite honestly, at that point, it was becoming quite blind in a way to what I was up to, and I was In retrospect, I feel fairly arrogant to my community members that had concerns about the amount of development that was going on all over in Madison County. It wasn't just there. It was up at Wolf Laurel, and they were putting in that septic system up at Wolf Laurel and the airports, and people were starting to get extraordinarily upset about the degree of development going on in the area. So the only good thing I can say about this at all is that actually I had to fight with my partners quite a bit. I did manage to get this whole area here put into permanent, into a park. There's a very beautiful waterfall here. This is a creek. I did preserve all this area, and they wanted to put that all as well in the lot. So that was my only success. So where have I ended up? My last project, paint rock. So as 2008 came along and we had the huge crash that Harry spoke so well about, I'm fortunate enough to be one of the 3% who has survived. Barely, but I'm just now coming out of it, but I'm still here. And as I started to deal with the fallout of the economic crash, and it certainly gave me an opportunity to stop and take a breath and look at what was it I actually am up to here, and to look back at why I originally became a developer. I was fortunate enough to have this last property. Now this is called Paint Rock. This is an historic farm, the same size as the Coggins farm, interestingly enough, about 160 acres, right here on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina, this being the French Broad, this being National Park in Tennessee. And so on this, I was, I kind of came full circle. I think Harry mentioned the word redemption, or, kind of coming back, into focus and an opportunity to be aligned with what I truly set out to do. On this one, it took me about 3 to 4 years, but I was able to convince my partners on this to place the entire forested area. It's a little hard to see, but there's a line about right here, and this is all forest. And we did place this in a conservation agreement. It's permanently conserved now. We did craft that with Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy. We did put in I think a really good plan for it. You can grow forest crops, which was mentioned here earlier. So ginseng, the black cohosh, and all those other crops can be grown in the understory of the forest. Now what we have left here is 35 acres of prime farmland. You've all heard about farmland today and how little there is left. So this property is currently under contract with 2 farmers, and we hope to close with them in the next 30 days. I have not had a chance to build a relationship with them yet, and my hope is that they are the farmers that they say they are, and so I think we have a real good shot at an awesome turnout for this historic farm with the 111 acres protected forever, and the remainder staying a farm, which is really meant to be. I mean, this is perfectly flat. We've heard about how rare it is to have flat. That's why we also call this the plateau. So, that's the story of development in my life, and I've been really in a resting for 5 years, which is fabulous, because I realize I came here today not really as much to teach or to talk to you about what I went through, but really to learn. And now I know I have the opportunity with Idlewood Properties to take everything I've heard today and to, the next property or development that I do, it's going to go back to the beginning of my intentions here. I'm going to take what I've learned here today and create a truly sustainable project. Will be the only type that I'm interested in participating in from now on. And I feel like we've all had a wake-up call. This economic collapse of 2008, it has given us pause to really sit back and question and ask, where is it we're heading? And, back to the food conversation, I do want to talk about that for a minute too, because, we have 3 days worth of food in our grocery stores at any given time. And so if there's ever a disruption in our food supply, 3 days we're gone. They're emptied. I mean, I actually stopped at Ingles at 5 this morning. I was amazed. That's when they were out there getting all the food out. It really shows you how much food is getting put out. So, we had this economic disruption. Well, what if we had a disruption of another type where our food supply was disrupted and the food supply chain was disrupted? I mean, we literally have 3 days and we're done. We're all going to be out here scrambling around, figuring out what it is we're going to eat. So this whole conversation we're having about locally available food, and this is a critical conversation. And I think we really need to get this system in place that everyone has been talking about today. So this is one of the most important symposiums and conversations I think we can have. And I look forward to implementing the information that I've gathered and working together with someone to create a truly sustainable project for this area. Any questions?
When you were talking about 5 and 10 acre lots, now you're talking about more sustainable development. So could I assume that that's higher density development you're thinking about, or how does that work?
Well, this is where I am coming to. Harry mentioned most of my projects are what he was speaking of. What he feels like we're not going to be seeing is the market anymore. These rural second home vacation lots, which is really largely, what I've done, except for this last one. My theory is that I see myself doing something closer to town. I do not see myself going out 35, 40 minutes from town anymore. And I really think that developing systems for producing local food in a very small area and educating ourselves and producing our own food through aquaponics, hydroponics, as much gardening as we can do. I live on 1.5 acres on Kenilworth Lake right now, and I have 10,000 square feet of garden, terraces, I have bees, I have chickens, orchards and berries. I mean, I'm working on creating a sustainable life for myself on a very small amount of land. And I would like to get involved with a project close to town that had those kind of practices in place so that someone bought into there, they would have those systems in place to eat already. Yes?
I have 2 questions. One is, as a developer today, what banking institutions today, if any, does a developer run into that's looking at the triple bottom line? That's my first question. And the second one is, as a developer, in terms of educating yourself with climate change, peak oil, economic contraction, where is it that developers are skilling up, looking at the triple bottom line in terms of meeting the needs of the environment, the social setting, and a viable economy that takes into consideration the generations to come? Those are my 2 questions.
Well, the first question in banking, I can't really speak to. Harry could probably answer that better. The reason that I survived, I didn't use banks to do any of this. I didn't borrow a single dollar from bank. I did do some home equity lines, which a little bit, so I did borrow from that level. But I did every one of these projects by organizing buyers collectively and having them come in at the beginning and get a nice piece of land for themselves at a very reduced rate by coming in the beginning. And each one of these projects was done with zero bank, and that's the only reason that I'm in the 3%, because I didn't deal with the banks. So I can't answer your question about banks. Could you ask me your second question?
Just as a developer, continuing education, learning about triple bottom line, having developments take into account these 3 legs of the stool for what would be classified a sustainable development.
Yes.
Is there anything out there for developers,
That is a great question. I think, isn't that why we're here today? Like, where would a developer go to find out if what they want to do was truly sustainable? There is nowhere to go. Right now, we have, view shed became very important, right? People have started looking at view sheds a lot. Watersheds have been looked at some. Steep slope development, we've gotten a handle on that. Well, where is food shed? For example, and that's really what's being talked about today. Where's the food shed? We need to create a food shed as well as a watershed, and what was the second? Watershed, view shed, and food shed. So I think this symposium, this is where we've got to create this. Buncombe County does not know what sustainability is right now.
It's a great opportunity for developers.
Yes,
To meet your needs.
exactly.
To meet our needs, to meet the world's needs.
Yes.
This is a tough question, I know. I'm a community planner, and I wonder if you, in your experience, as a result of your experience, feel there might be any value in zoning, governmental zoning, in these areas, or do you feel it is completely irrelevant in that case?
Well, I would have to say that, okay, we have zoning to protect steep slope, right? We're starting to get that in place to prevent landslides and for safety. We have some zoning. I'm not super familiar with the zoning regulations in Buncombe County, but, we do have zoning, I'm assuming, to protect water somewhat. We don't have any zoning to make sure that we're going to have land to grow food on for ourselves and future generations, period. And without that in place, it's probably going to all disappear. So that's my thought.